In this presentation, I will briefly discuss about the impact of the United States Depression on rural Southerners. The Great Depression was a period of great economic crisis during the 1930s. It started in the United States but rapidly expanded throughout most of the known world. During this time, a significant amount of the population was unemployed. Famine and homelessness were commonplace to most. From, a, from white to African American were affected in this time. In this period, people did not have any money to buy food. As we can see in this picture, people will stand in long lines at soup kitchens to receive free food. The stock market crash of 1929 is often cited as the herald of the Great Depression. It began on October 24, 1929, and was the most devastating stock market crash in the history of the United States. With the stock market crash, the Great Depression began in New York City, and this is when many middle and upper income families first experienced poverty in America. The economic calamity will slam the nation's largest cities unremorsefully hard. Shortly thereafter, in the Great Plains of the United States, a long period of droughts began, which in turn led to dust storms that were created from the dry topsoil. These events will be known as the Dust Bowl. They were a nightmare for agricultural regions such as the South. Some of the reasons that the Dust Bowl occurred were overfarming, livestock overgrazing, drought, and poor farming practices. There were more than 100 million acres of land affected by Dust Bowl. There were 14 dust storms in 1932 of the Great Plains. During Great Depression, the South was the poorest region in the United States. Its per capita income barely 50% of the nation's figure. It was a poor rural one-crop society in which too many people chased too little farm income. It was strictly segregated, and African Americans were both economically and politically powerless. The region's politics were dominated by a conservative alliance of county seat elites, planters and industrialists, mostly immune to popular pressure because of their wealth and the restricted nature of the electorate. Planters and industrialists had a mutual interest in surplus labor force, low wages, low taxes, and minimal government services. Unemployment had risen to an estimated 25% of the labor force. At the same time, 20 million Americans turned to public and private relief agencies for assistance. As the last hire and the first fires, African Americans entered the Depression long before the stock market crash in 1929, and they stayed there longer than other Americans. When the Agricultural Adjustment Administration paid farmers to withdraw cotton lands from production, county officials barred African Americans from representation and deprived them of the government checks. For their part, by exempting domestic service and unskilled labor from minimum wage and partitionary provision, the National Recovery Administration and the Social Security programs eliminated. The rural South was the most affected region by the Depression, having suffered from low wages and low crop prices. The Great Depression is usually remembered as a time when people were struggling to work and eat. Although whites were affected by the Depression, the ones who suffered the most were black, because racism persisted at that time. Shortly after this time, World War II began, which helped the stabilization of the economy and reduced unemployment rates. When the World War II started, It ended the Depression because 12 million Americans were sent into military, and also the same amount of people were needed for related jobs. They took care of 17 million unemployed in 1939, which helped very much with the end of the Depression.